God said, let them go. Focus on yourself and trust God. There comes a moment in life when heaven whispers something your heart doesn't want to hear. You prayed for them, you fought for them, you cried over them, you held on when everything inside you was breaking. And then, divine separation is not rejection, it is redirection. And that truth is hard to swallow when your heart is still bleeding. Because when someone leaves, it feels personal. It feels like you weren't enough, not strong enough, not lovable enough, not valuable enough. The mind starts building a case against you. If I had done more, if I had been better, if I had stayed quiet, if I had tried harder. And before you know it, you are carrying a verdict of rejection that God never wrote. But what if their leaving was not a statement about your worth? What if it was a movement of God? We often interpret closed doors as punishment. We see distance as abandonment. We feel separation as failure. But heaven sees something we cannot. God sees the road ahead. He sees what would have broken you, drained you, distracted you, diminished you. And sometimes His love is not shown by keeping something in your life, but by removing it. You call it rejection. God calls it protection. You call it loss. God calls it liberation. Think about it. There are relationships that felt right in one season, but would have destroyed you in another. There are people you loved deeply who were never meant to walk with you into your calling, not because they are evil, not because you are better, but because your assignments were different. Seasons change, and when seasons change, roles shift. A tree does not cry when its leaves fall. It understands that what is falling is making room for what is coming. But we cling to the leaves, we tape them back onto branches, we beg winter to feel like summer, and in doing so, we resist the very process that would make us stronger. Divine separation hurts because it touches attachment, it touches memory, it touches hope, it touches the future you imagined. You are not just grieving a person, you are grieving a picture, a dream, a what could have been. But God is not obligated to fulfill the picture you painted when He has already written a greater story. Sometimes He separates you because you were shrinking to fit a space that was too small for your destiny. You were dimming your light so someone else would not feel uncomfortable. You were tolerating what was draining you because you feared being alone. And God says, I did not create you to survive. I created you to thrive. Rejection says, you were not chosen. Redirection says, you were chosen for something else. Rejection says, you are unwanted. Redirection says, you are being repositioned. You may not see it now. You may not understand it yet. But one day you will look back and thank God for the door that slammed shut. You will thank Him for the silence. You will thank Him for the distance, because what felt like heartbreak was actually alignment. God will never remove something good unless He intends to establish something greater, and sometimes that greater is not another person, it is a stronger you, a healed you, a focused you, a you that no longer begs for love, but walks in confidence. Divine separation is not the end of your story. It is the editing of your story, and the author knows exactly what he is doing. Trust that when He removes someone, He is not rejecting you, He is redirecting you toward the life you prayed for, even if it doesn't look the way you imagined. Letting go is an act of spiritual warfare. It doesn't feel like warfare. It feels like heartbreak. It feels like loss. It feels like sitting on the edge of your bed staring at your phone, fighting the urge to send one more message. It feels like swallowing words you practiced in your head 100 times. It feels like silence where there used to be laughter. But make no mistake, when you choose to let go of what God has told you to release, something is happening in the spiritual realm, because attachment can become an altar, and whatever you refuse to release can quietly replace your trust in God. The battle is not just about a person. It is about control. It is about identity. It is about where you place your security. The enemy does not always attack with obvious destruction. Sometimes he attacks with emotional entanglement. If he can keep your mind consumed, your heart divided, your focus broken, he doesn't need to destroy you. You will stall yourself. That's why letting go feels violent inside. It is tearing down an idol you didn't realize you built. It is stepping away from something that once made you feel safe, seen, wanted. It is choosing obedience over emotion. And obedience is rarely comfortable. Your flesh says, hold on. Your fear says, you'll be alone. Your pride says, don't let them win. Your insecurity says, you'll never find better. But the Spirit whispers, release. Letting go is warfare because you are fighting your own impulses. You are fighting the addiction to familiarity. You are fighting the comfort of what you know, even if what you know is hurting you. Some of you are not in love. You are in bondage. You are bonded to the potential, bonded to the memory, bonded to who they used to be. And every time you try to walk away, nostalgia pulls you back like gravity. But growth requires gravity to be broken. When God says let them go, He is not asking you to pretend it didn't matter. He is asking you to trust Him with what mattered. There is power in saying, I will not chase what is not chasing me. There is power in saying, I will not beg for what God did not assign. There is power in saying, even if I love them, I love God more. That is warfare. It is closing the door without slamming it. It is praying for them instead of plotting a return. It is deleting the number and then falling to your knees because your hands are shaking. Do you know how strong you have to be to walk away when your heart wants to stay? That strength does not come from you. It comes from surrender. The enemy wants you distracted. God wants you delivered. The enemy wants you replaying old conversations. God wants you receiving new vision. Every day you choose not to text. Every night you choose not to stalk their page. Every moment you choose peace over pursuit. You are winning a battle no one else sees, and heaven sees it. Letting go is not passive. It is aggressive faith. It is declaring, I trust God enough to lose what I cannot keep, so I can receive what I cannot yet see. You are not weak for struggling. You are human, but when you release them, even while your voice trembles, chains begin to crack, because sometimes the greatest victory is not gaining something new. It is finally releasing what has been holding you hostage. Negative feelings are battles of the mind, not the spirit. And the battlefield can feel so real. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, a whisper that says you weren't enough, a thought that slips in while you're driving, a memory that replays when you're trying to sleep. Suddenly, your chest feels heavy, your stomach tightens, your peace disappears. Nothing even happened in that moment, but your mind started a war. The spirit inside you knows God is faithful. It knows you are loved. It knows that what left was not meant to stay. Deep down, there is a part of you that believes that. But your mind argues. It gathers evidence. It pulls up old conversations. It zooms in on your mistakes. It magnifies your flaws. It creates scenarios that never happened. It predicts futures that don't exist. And before you know it, you are fighting shadows. Negative feelings are powerful because they feel like truth. But feelings are not facts. Just because you feel abandoned doesn't mean you were abandoned by God. Just because you feel unworthy doesn't mean you are unworthy. Just because you feel forgotten doesn't mean heaven has forgotten you. The mind can be wounded, and a wounded mind will interpret everything through pain. If someone walks away, the wounded mind says, "See, everyone leaves." If a prayer isn't answered immediately, it says, "God isn't listening." If you make one mistake, it says, "You always ruin things." It speaks in absolutes. Always, never, everyone, no one. That is not the voice of the Spirit. That is the echo of hurt. And if you don't confront it, it will control you. You will start isolating yourself. You will start overthinking every interaction. You will raid rejection into neutral moments. You will sabotage new beginnings because your mind is still imprisoned by old endings. But here is the truth. Your spirit is stronger than your thoughts. Your spirit knows peace even when your mind feels chaos. That's why sometimes in the middle of your breakdown, there is a quiet voice inside saying, "You're going to be okay." That's not your anxiety talking. That's God's presence anchoring you. Overcoming negative feelings doesn't mean pretending they don't exist. It means confronting them with truth. When your mind says, "I'll always be alone," you answer, "God is with me." When it says, "I messed everything up," you answer, "I am still growing." When it says, "They were the best I'll ever have," you answer, "God's plans are bigger than my past." You have to speak back, because if you don't, the thoughts will grow roots. The enemy cannot control your spirit, but he will try to influence your mind. If he can keep you discouraged, he can delay you. If he can keep you doubting, he can distract you. But you are not your thoughts. You are not your worst moment. You are not the voice in your head that criticizes you at 2 a.m. You are a soul being refined, and every time you choose to believe God over your feelings, you reclaim ground in that battlefield. The war in your mind may be intense, but it is not permanent. Peace is not the absence of negative thoughts. It is the decision not to bow to them. And when you align your mind with what your spirit already knows, that you are loved, chosen, and guided, the battle begins to lose its power. Not overnight, not instantly, but steadily, and one day you will realize the thoughts that once controlled you no longer have a voice strong enough to shake you. When God removes them, He is revealing you. At first it feels like something is being taken from you. Like a piece of your life has been ripped away. You feel exposed. You feel uncovered. You feel the silence where their voice used to be, the emptiness where their presence once stood. And in that emptiness, something uncomfortable begins to surface. You, without the distraction, without the validation, without the constant emotional noise, just you, and that can be terrifying, because sometimes we don't realize how much of our identity was wrapped up in someone else. Who were you trying to be to keep them? What were you tolerating just to avoid losing them? How much were you shrinking so they would stay comfortable? When God removes someone, He is not just changing your relationships. He is uncovering your reflection. You begin to see the places where you lacked boundaries, the areas where you ignored red flags, the moments you accepted less than you deserved because you feared being alone. You see how much you were giving and how little you were receiving. You see how often you silenced your own needs. That revelation hurts, but revelation is the beginning of transformation. God will sometimes allow a relationship to end so you can finally confront what you were avoiding within yourself. Not to shame you, not to condemn you, but to heal you. Maybe you were depending on them for validation that only God can give. Maybe you were leaning on them for security instead of building your own strength. Maybe you made them your source when they were only meant to be a companion. And when they leave, you feel the withdrawal. It feels like weakness. It feels like desperation. It feels like you lost something essential. But what if what you lost was an illusion? What if you weren't as secure as you thought? What if your peace was tied to their mood? What if your joy depended on their attention? When God removes them, He reveals the cracks not to break you, but to rebuild you stronger. You start asking deeper questions. Why do I fear abandonment so much? Why do I overextend myself? Why do I chase approval? Why do I ignore my intuition? Those questions are painful, but they are powerful, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you admit it, you can change it. God loves you too much to let you stay in patterns that will keep wounding you. So sometimes He allows a separation that forces introspection, forces growth, forces you to sit with yourself. And in that solitude, something sacred happens. You begin to rediscover who you are without trying to impress anyone. You begin to hear your own thoughts clearly. You begin to rebuild your confidence from the inside instead of borrowing it from someone else's attention. You realize you were stronger than you thought. You realize you ignored your own voice too often. You realize you deserve peace, not just passion. The pain of removal becomes the mirror of revelation. God is not just removing a person, He is refining a character. He is strengthening discernment. He is teaching you the value of boundaries. He is reminding you that your worth is not tied to who stays. And slowly, the emptiness doesn't feel like loss anymore. It feels like space, space to grow, space to heal, space to become. When God removes them, He is not subtracting from your life. He is uncovering the version of you that was hidden beneath compromise. And that version, the healed, wiser, stronger you, was always worth revealing. Trusting God means releasing control. And if we are honest, control feels safer than faith. Control lets you calculate. It lets you plan every conversation in your head. It lets you rehearse outcomes. It gives you the illusion that if you just say the right thing, do the right thing, hold on tightly enough, you can prevent loss. But control is exhausting. It keeps you up at night analyzing tone changes in text messages. It makes you replay moments, searching for the exact second everything shifted. It convinces you that if you can just figure it out, you can fix it. And sometimes there is nothing to fix. Trusting God means accepting that you are not the author of every chapter. You are a participant, not the director. And that realization can shake you, especially when your heart is involved, because you want guarantees, you want clarity, you want to know that if you let go, something better is coming immediately. But faith does not operate on guarantees. It operates on surrender. Surrender feels like standing at the edge of what you know and stepping forward without seeing the ground beneath you. It feels like saying, God, I don't understand this. I don't like this. This hurts, but I trust you. And that kind of trust is not passive. It is deeply active. It requires you to unclench your fists. Some of you are holding on so tightly to a person, to an outcome, to a timeline, that your knuckles are white. You are trying to force something to work because you're afraid of what happens if it doesn't. But what if releasing control is the very thing that sets you free? Control says, I have to make this happen. Trust says, if it's meant for me, God will sustain it. Control says, I can't lose this. Trust says, what's truly for me cannot miss me. When you try to control everything, you place the weight of the world on your own shoulders. Every delay feels like your fault. Every conflict feels like a failure. Every ending feels like you didn't try hard enough. But trusting God shifts the weight back where it belongs. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop striving in fear. It means you pray instead of panic. It means you wait instead of chase. It means you accept that sometimes silence is an answer. Releasing control also means letting go of the need for closure. That's hard. You want the final conversation, the explanation, the apology, the neat ending that makes everything make sense. But sometimes closure comes from obedience, not from dialogue. Sometimes closure is simply deciding, I will not reopen what God has closed. Trust grows strongest in uncertainty. It grows when you don't have all the answers but choose faith anyway. It grows when tears are still in your eyes, but peace is slowly returning to your heart. You may not know why it ended. You may not understand why it unfolded the way it did. But trusting God means believing that His vision is clearer than your emotions. And one day, you will look back and realize that the moment you released control was the moment you stepped into deeper freedom. Because you were never meant to carry what only God can handle, your healing begins where your obsession ends. Obsession is subtle. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like constantly checking their social media. Sometimes it looks like bringing their name into every conversation. Sometimes it's pretending you're fine while your mind is still revolving around them like they are the center of your universe. You wake up thinking about them. You go to sleep replaying them. You measure your progress by whether they notice. And you call it love, but if we are honest, sometimes it's attachment wrapped in fear. Obsession keeps the wound open. Every time you revisit their page, every time you reread old messages, every time you imagine scenarios of reconciliation, you are pressing on a bruise that is trying to heal. Healing requires space. You cannot heal from what you constantly expose yourself to. When someone leaves, the heart goes into survival mode. It searches for evidence that the connection still exists. It looks for signs. It analyzes silence. It feeds on crumbs of attention. And in that desperation, you lose yourself. Your joy becomes dependent on whether they respond. Your mood shifts based on what they post. Your confidence rises and falls with their acknowledgement. That is not freedom. That is emotional captivity. And captivity feels normal when you've lived in it long enough. But there comes a moment when you are tired of checking, tired of hoping, tired of overthinking, tired of building your day around someone who is no longer building a life with you. That exhaustion is sacred. Because it is the doorway to healing. Your healing begins the day you decide, I want my peace more than I want their presence. That decision is not easy. It feels like withdrawal. It feels like grief all over again. It feels like facing the reality that it truly might be over. And that acceptance can break you before it rebuilds you. But obsession keeps you stuck in the past. Healing pulls you into the present. When you stop obsessing, you start noticing yourself again, your hobbies, your dreams, your neglected goals. You realize how much time and energy you poured into someone else, while your own growth was waiting. You begin to ask different questions, not why didn't they choose me, but why didn't I choose myself? Not how do I get them back, but how do I become whole? That shift changes everything. Healing is not instant, It is daily. It is choosing not to look, choosing not to text, choosing not to fantasize about what could have been, choosing to sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it, and slowly the grip loosens, the thoughts come less frequently, the memories sting less sharply, the urge to check fades, you begin to breathe without feeling like your chest is collapsing. You start laughing again genuinely. You start making plans that don't involve them. You start feeling hope that isn't tied to their return. That is healing. It begins when you release the need to monitor, to chase, to control the narrative. It begins when you say, even if they never come back, I will still move forward. Obsession chains you to what was. Healing opens you to what can be. And the moment you reclaim your focus, your energy, your heart, that is the moment you step out of survival and into restoration. Your healing does not begin when they change. It begins when you do.